Welcome, everyone, to Another Perspective, episode 7, with my illustrious, my infamous, my unique guest,
We'll go with
Gregg
unique.
Guerin. Gregory, right?
Hello. Thank you. Yes, Gregory.
Is Greg short for Gregory?
It is short for Gregory.
I am so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be so fun. The reason you're here is because you're the best friend or the husband of my best friend, one of my best friends. And that earns you a very special place in my life. So congratulations.
Amazing. I'm glad to have slipped in through an adjacent relationship.
But you're also here on your own merit. So I'm excited to talk about all the things today. For my listeners, I just want to prepare you. This is going to be a different podcast than maybe some of the ones that you've heard before. And that's on purpose. I think the last 3 have been people in my life telling some stories and kind of unpacking their how they came to faith, why they came to faith, and all of that. While we may get into that here today with Greg, I really want to shape this conversation around I want to have the permission to talk about anything we want to today. Like, I don't want there to be any boundaries on what we can and can't talk about in terms of topics, because one of the things that Jerry Root taught us, and he's the first interview that I did, is that all truths can be plumbed. All truths can be plumbed deeper, applied wider, and seen in coherent relationships with all other truths, which means we can literally talk about any topic and find a connection to any other topic in some way, shape, or form and get value out of it. Would you agree, Greg?
Yeah, I love that. Great words from Jerry. And all jokes aside, we've become good friends as well. And you've been a vital resource to me and to my family a number of times the last several years. And so I'm so thrilled to be here today.
So, Greg, I have a question for you.
Hit it. Let's see where we go.
Actually, I have a few questions. Quite a few. This is going to be a conversation, not necessarily interview style. However, I did come somewhat prepared. I want to ask, what would you consider yourself an expert in?
My immediate response is going to be nothing. And I think
Nothing. I actually thought about that. I thought about how I would answer that question. I would be like, well, nothing. So I get that. That's just a great framing.
Yeah, and I don't even mean it to be humble. Or pseudo humble. The more you learn about something, I think the more you don't know, right? And so the more I learn about something, the more I recognize I don't know, and then the more I really respect the people that I would think are experts in the things that I'm passionate about. So things that I know things about investing, and I'd be immediately able to talk about multiple other people that I would say are actual experts. But
Sure.
things that I'm passionate about, apologetics, economics, politics, movies, TV shows, books, history, autobiographies, biographies. I love learning. And really, if we were to zero it all the way up to the top, it really end up being apologetics and faith, history, business, economics, and politics, and movies.
I love that. Okay. So Greg, explain to me what exactly you do. Again, you've explained it to me before, and just pretend I'm 5.
Yeah, I work at an unbelievable company. We sell investment products, and I do anything I can to help the sales team sell. And that can be anywhere from giving, like yesterday, giving a fun 20-minute presentation on a topic, to doing an interview with some of our clients in a particular area, all the way down to doing one-on-one calls or meetings, either in person or over the phone or over Zoom or something like this, where we're either talking about macro, what are our views on the market, what are our views on the economy, all the way down to potentially going into the weeds on a particular strategy. How does it work? What does it do? Where would somebody put that into their investment portfolio? So that's what I do. I also work a lot with the marketing team, who's incredible in developing a lot of the content. And so really all the way up at the top, we do a lot of material, presentation material, consumable material, and investment content.
Wow, that's a lot. And you travel a lot. Why do you travel and where do you go? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we travel all across Europe, maybe even to be a little bit more specific too. We largely focus a lot of our conversations on U.S. economics and maybe global movements in different economic things like interest rates, et cetera. But then we also are looking at rules-based kind of dividend strategies and core equities, all the way over to the more fun thing, which is thematic investing and AI and stuff. And where I go to support that sales
Ooh.
team happens to be in outside of the American continent. And so anywhere from ranging from Iceland to where I was yesterday in Oslo and Helsinki, down to our colleague down in the Middle East in Israel and Dubai, and all the way over to where I was earlier this year in Asia, and most of the time in Europe, and as much as I possibly can be in Switzerland, because it's the greatest place in the entire
Oh,
world.
yeah. Switzerland is the greatest place on planet Earth.
Agree. It's like a fake,
We
it's
agree
fake.
on this. No, it's how is this real? You walk into Switzerland and you're like, wait, what portal did I walk through to get here?
I agree.
Do you have a
It's
favorite
it.
town in Switzerland?
Lugano is my favorite place in the world because you get Swiss beauty. It looks like
Okay.
If you look up Lake Lugano, it looks like Jurassic Park. And everything is on time and efficient because it's in Switzerland, but it comes fully loaded with Italian food and especially gelato at -9 Gelato, the greatest gelato place in the world.
Okay. Take that, everyone. Free commercial, -9, gelato, Lugano. Okay. So, back to your job. How is the state of the market?
Yeah, it is.
The
Depending on the
most
day.
obnoxious question.
Well, it depends on the time of day you're asking. And in the last couple of weeks, we've been all over the place. Where we are today, we have a pocket of the stock market in an absolute melt up phase. That's the semiconductors. And then an actual expert in technician is actually saying that they just entered what's called bubble zone. But the broader stock market had a mild correction on what many of us would consider one of the biggest geopolitical shocks in the history of the world, closing the Straits of Hormuz, where I'm sure everybody now knows
Right.
20% of oil comes from the Straits of Hormuz. And it is just incredible that the market at that point was only down 7, 9% from all time highs. And then to have come and recovered so quickly, even with what many of us would agree, not really a resolution, um, it just goes to show kind of what is really important. And this is what maybe a lot of people are not aware of. The quarter that we are in right now, this is May 14th, about 85% of S&P 500 companies have reported their earnings for this recent quarter, and it is like by far
Hmm.
the best quarter in the history of American capitalism. And the S&P 500 earnings are just
So that's really
completely.
defying expectations.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the key is that the market is not the economy. And so there might be many, many people who are living paycheck to paycheck or not having these robust gains that they're reading about in the market. We could plumb the depths of that as well. But right now, the actual
Hmm.
companies that make up the S&P 500 are reporting the best quarter they've ever reported. And it's largely fueled by this one engine plane, which is kind of the AI investment boom. And that is what's really driving the US economy right now and the stock market.
Which is so fascinating. AI is something that you and I talk about a lot, and I would love to include our listeners in this conversation about because I know that AI is something that you've given a lot of thought to,
Mm.
and you play around with, but you look at AI from the investment standpoint mostly for your job, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a human also, so that we can talk about some of the personal things, but most of my time, I'm probably the hours I've spent, almost all of it has been spent on the business and the investment side, trying to make sure, is this a hype? Is it real? What can you do with it? Are people spending on it? Are people using it for good purposes? Obviously, everybody has the same humanitarian things. As a fan of movies, I've seen Terminator 1, 2, 3, and 4, maybe 5 times each. So I'm aware of the potential where this could go bad.
Totally. So yes, there's the humanitarian side of things and there's the business investment side of things. What are you learning about the the business perception of AI?
Yeah, so I think the business perception of AI needs to come right after understanding like the actual what AI is. And so I read a book by Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmidt, and Daniel Hutlocker. Eric Schmidt was one of the CEOs of Google. Daniel Hutlocker is the head computer PhD doctor at MIT, and Henry Kissinger is like obviously the world famous Secretary of State, geopolitical person. And what they talk through the book, and that was just one of them, but what they say is that basically AI is bound by its parameters. And so it really can't come to life. I understand some of the ways that people can think it does as it relates to getting cognition and things like this. But in the way that I've learned, the actual way that these vectors upon vectors of data, analyzing two triangles pointing up and one triangle pointing down is probably a cat. And then all of the things that they've learned from there, it really helps you to set your understanding of what this thing really is and why when I take a picture with Gemini and say, what is this? It can actually tell me, or where can I buy this? It can actually tell me because it's analyzing the picture. Then to the investment side is to say, okay, well, where would this have practical use? And I mean, it's almost like endless. But then you can go one step further and go, okay, when we've had technological shifts like this in the past, what has happened? And I'll just give you one really interesting one that we've learned about recently. Only because clients asked me the question, I went and did the research for them. So the internet comes out in 1995, Kristen, right? And if I had come to you and said, hey, the internet's going to disrupt brick and mortar retail, and then I jump back in my time machine and I'm out, and you look around and you go, well, who's the biggest brick and mortar retailer in the United States? So who would you say? 1995, who's the biggest brick and mortar retailer in the United States? What would you guess?
I mean, I don't remember the rise of Walmart. So, let's see, 1995. It would
Absolutely.
be Walmart?
Yep, by far.
Okay,
And
okay,
so
okay.
Walmart's the
Okay.
biggest brick and mortar retailer in the US. And if you had thought, hey, you know what? This thing's going to disrupt them. I'm going to go short their stock, or I'm not going to own their stock. Well, from 1995 to today, Walmart's up something like 6,000%. And then there's a company called Williams Sonoma, which many of you might know is only found in American malls. And that company's up 12,000%. So, so point being, like, the disruption that we might perceive might not be exactly where we think, even when we're directionally right. Like, there were a lot of brick and mortar retailers that, did get hurt, but I think the economic benefits are tremendous and they can outweigh any of the costs, or a lot of it.
Well, it makes me think about well, I think Sears went out of business, and I think and Blockbuster, those are some of the ones that you kind of think of. And would you say that those were the companies that just failed to innovate and adopt the internet in a timely fashion and see where things were going? Because obviously Walmart now has this robust online, servicing program, and then streaming overtook Blockbuster and all that stuff. So what's the lesson there?
That's a great adopt and innovate, right? Blockbuster was even, I think, had the opportunity to buy Netflix, if I remember. But even the idea of what Blockbuster got disrupted by wasn't just set, because if you remember, Netflix was mailing DVDs through the mail. And I actually liked
Right.
Blockbuster's version better because you could get the DVD through the mail and then return it to the store and get your movie or your show much faster that way. But I think the longer term thing was, and actually, Strider Alas, economist from Wheaton College, he actually showed this to me 2 weeks ago. He calls Netflix a DVD company with an AI and machine learning background, or a direct to mail company with a machine learning background. What they were able to do by collecting the data was to actually find out what their clients actually wanted, right? So rather than just
Mm.
rely on having the one place where people came to. You remember how fun it was to go to Blockbuster on a Friday night? And you remember they would put the movie of the month basically was in its one section. They had like 50 copies of that movie. And then you would get there too late and you couldn't get that movie. Nobody that grows up now has this idea of what it's like to want to watch a
Mm.
movie and not be able to watch that movie. That literally doesn't exist right
Yeah,
now.
that's fascinating. Right.
So And that probably has lots of negative benefits or negative consequences. I think you're right though. If you and adopt positive technological trends, it tends to work better for you. And that's not just for big companies like you said, Sears or Walmart. I think that's true for us. Like we need to learn how to use these tools because it's not that AI is going to disrupt my job. Someone who knows how to use AI is going to disrupt my job. And that was from Jensen
Let's
Huang, the
go.
CEO of NVIDIA. That's not my own quote.
It's still very true. So I guess my question for those listening and for myself is that was the internet. This is AI, two very different beasts. Does the introduction of the internet and all the fears that came around with that and how it's shaked out, is it a one-to-one correlation, or are there some things we really should be afraid of or thoughtful about with AI that we didn't have to worry about with the internet? Or is it kind of the same?
It's a great question. I actually think it's not the same, and I do think it has potentially more disruption. And so I think it's more akin to thinking about not just the internet, but also the industrial revolution. So I think it's if you were to combine both of those,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I don't think anybody would actually say today that it's not good that we can farm an entire farm with, 5 people. But when it used to take 100 people and now it only takes 5, you can see that obvious disruption. But the ability today to have people not on the farm, but able to create Netflix and create the content in Netflix and act in movies that like there's a reason why most art comes from developed countries that have developed these massive other innovations and things such that you don't have to be farming the field to get your food. So I think that's one of the key things. But I think it is it would be. I'm a massive techno optimist, and I do believe AI is going to benefit humanity more than it will more than the cost will be. But I don't want to overlook those costs, and because it can go so quickly, there will likely be some disruption. And so I think it's just important to know that.
Yeah.
And then as a person, how can I prepare myself to be the least disrupted, and how can I maybe prepare society, or this gets to the church, how can we meet those people that maybe are in that bridge phase from having their job disrupted, maybe a driver from to self-driving cars as a perfect example, right? But that would be kind of the farming and the tractor revolution of the industrial revolution combined with the speed that the internet allowed things to change. And when you look at the stock market and you look at the world, I think things are changing even faster than they ever have.
Yeah, it's accelerating. Yeah. Yeah, especially
Absolutely.
because AI accelerates. And so the change is going to accelerate.
Now, how have you used AI? Because that's like just I always like to rather than kind of be in the my head or looking on in kind of earnings reports. How do you use AI for what you do personally and professionally?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I use it a lot. Um, so I'm as a realtor professionally, I will this may be TMI, but I just think it's fascinating. I often record phone calls or conversations or appointments that I have, and then I will download that transcript and run it through AI so that it's taking notes for me and I can remember because I really struggle with memory sometimes. And so right now, that is one of the best ways I can be like, "Oh, did they say they were including the washer and dryer? I can't remember." And what I used to do is just take copious notes while I'm talking to someone. It kept me from being present. So the
Right.
ability to do that allows me to look someone in the face and listen while remembering at the same time. So it's little things like that that are a gift. I promise I'm not using it for nefarious purposes. If you're any of my clients, if you don't want me to record, you just tell me, but I'm probably recording you. Anyway, uh, so that's just one very simple thing that helps me actually be more present, which is I think one of the purposes of AI that we can use for good is to allow us to be even more human in our human interactions and let computers do what the computers are supposed to do. And so it's taking me away from screens as opposed to pushing me more into screen. And that's to your point about AI optimism and tech optimism. I'm with you on that. If we use it correctly. Um,
Absolutely.
Other things that I do with it, I never took business classes. I never took statistics classes. I never took a class on Excel. and I can develop complex modeling for clients who might be looking at investment properties and want to understand if it's going to cash flow or what the cap rate is after they do repairs and things like that. These are things I could never come up with on my own if I studied a million math books. And all I
Wow.
have to do is ask for a formula or a series of formulas, and I can build out a whole spreadsheet in minutes that provides very precise modeling for them to compare properties to one another and decide which one is the best deal for me or what should I walk away from. And I really think I have, more than anything, protected people from investments that were going to harm them in the long
Hmm,
run. Um,
that's
and
amazing.
that ability to compare also lets you know when should I jump, because this one is a standout situation, right? Um, so that's been really powerful in my real estate life. Um, and then I think I use AI also to bounce ideas off of, to sharpen my creativity.
Hmm.
So I like to optimize. I like to build, innovate, create things like that. And I'm looking for the best idea, not just a good idea. And how can we, even going back to that quote about all things can be plumbed deeper, applied wider, seen in coherent relationships with all their truths. Okay, if I have an idea over here, how can it Venn diagram with this thing I'm working on over here, right? So,
Right.
as you know, run, I created, built, and run a comedy troupe, an improv comedy troupe called Salad Comedy, which is Dallas backwards. Feel free to find us on Instagram. We're very silly. That's for everyone else, Greg. You know who we are.
I love it.
And so it's like, okay, what is it? Yeah, I know. What does it look like for salad to overlap with this area of my life, or how can comedy meet real estate? These are just the kinds of things that I think about. It's also probably one of the reasons that this podcast exists, is because I just believe in I just want my whole life to be a massive Venn diagram.
Have you used it to get more sketch comedy ideas or things like that?
Well, we haven't really gone into the foray of sketch comedy yet. So that's a great question, because we've toyed with sketch, where sketch being, so let's talk about comedy. You love talking about comedy. This is why I wanted to bounce around to any idea possible, because Greg and I could literally talk about anything under the sun. Um, so with comedy, sketch comedy is where you pre-script out and you assign roles and you come up with costumes, or you film it a certain way. A lot of what's on Instagram and Reels and TikTok is sketch comedy that's just through film. Whereas SNL is sketch comedy that's on a stage and has a whole backdrop. Um, and we don't do any of that right now. That's a whole different beast. We just do improv, which is literally the opposite of preparation. And so we get a word or a story from the audience and build everything from scratch. So it's actually counterproductive to what we do to do any preparation or research, besides like the equivalent of like basketball drills. So when we practice, we're doing comedy drills to like develop our muscles and things like that. So AI helps when it comes to um in comedy, when it comes to coming up with new game ideas, new premise ideas, new practice ideas, new ways to warm up.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that's
No, that
interesting.
makes sense. I
Yeah.
think
How
that
about
was
you?
Well, it makes sense. And right as I said sketch comedy, I realized, of course, that's the exact opposite of improv. But even the idea of like brainstorming and just asking it to kind of get you guys engaging or in a different way, or maybe if
Yeah.
if Bobby doesn't show up to practice, you can just have one of the AIs
How
kind
can
of start
I
spitting
murder
stuff out.
Bobby? Sure.
Right,
Am I allowed to
exactly.
say that on? Just
Well, it's
kidding.
improv comedy, so it was presumed to be a joke. I use it a lot
Exactly.
for brainstorming. So that's kind of where my brain went to. I'll go on runs and open up Gemini Live and just say, "Hey, help me think
Yeah.
through this." Right? But that's where I was
Yep.
wondering as an improv comedian or as a comedian, could it help me come up with better material or something? I was just curious.
Well, I do that in all what you just described on your run is literally my life. So I'll be on a walk and I use Claude, so we can talk about the benefits of Chat,
Mm.
Claude, Gemini, Grok, etc. And um, I'll be on a walk or something and have multiple projects open and literally hop between like, what's the best approach for this listing appointment? What is the theological basis for um, XYZ? And also like, what's the best way to frame this conversation? So it's just
Mm.
like so great for me to it helps my mind work faster, and it is kind of a shortcut for I could spend a lot of time thinking about this and finally eventually get there, or I could just get there and then spend a lot of time thinking about that next domino, you
Oh,
know?
that's a great. I like the way you phrase that.
Um, so why do you use Gemini?
Well, the real reason was because of the context window. And so the context window is all the things that it's basically the near term memory, right? And I had set up Lindsay on ChatGPT, and she was using it for research for her projects. And I didn't want to disrupt that and have it to then also think through all the crazy things that I think, which is a combination of help me understand semiconductors, help me understand tokens per second, help me understand what was the question I asked it yesterday? I said, how many 3-pointers did Shaquille O'Neal hit in his NBA career? And like, I didn't want all my crazy, ridiculous things to disrupt her flow. So that's where I signed up for both of them. Plus, as someone who talks about it a lot, I kind of wanted to know the difference between the two. And a year and
Yeah.
a half ago, Claude was just the fun one, which was really good at writing. It's called Claude Sonnet for a reason, but they
Mm,
spent a lot of their focus
mm.
on coding, and it is the most, as long hopefully your listeners already know this, but if they don't, it is the most spectacular business rise in the history of the world. It might not last, but in the last 5 months, they've gone from an annual run rate, meaning you take their revenue they got in the month and multiply it by 12. They've got their annual run rate from 1 billion a year to 3 billion a year to 30 billion a year to 50 billion a year. it's,
So
it's
that's what I should have
insane.
invested in.
Well, yeah, it was just a
That's
surprise.
wild.
It's insane. So yeah, and then
That
Grok
is
has
wild.
the particular data where they can use Twitter data. And so a lot of times what I'll do to go, if you know how the models are trained and what data they have access to, it
Mm.
also gives you maybe an insight into what to do. So if there's something really current, like happening in the last 35 minutes, Grok might actually be a really good one to go to because it's accessing the Twitter database instantly, right? Versus some of the other ones are
Yeah.
training over time. But again, we don't need to talk about AI the whole time. It's just a
No, we
fascinating
don't need to
tool.
talk about AI the whole time. It is a fascinating tool, and I think you at least stepped on something that a lot of people don't like who might be just casually using AI don't think about is that AI does have to get trained on something.
Yeah,
And each of these different models, Chat, Grok, Gemini, Claude, are using different information to train, which is why it can be if you're doing research or you're trying to understand something, it can be beneficial to hop between them. And it's also what leads us to ask the question of regulation and things like copyright and what is it are these models allow you might hear stuff in the news about like different lawsuits and things like that regarding AI, and some of those have to do with are they allowed to train on things that are copyrighted? Are they allowed to train on things that aren't openly available or readily available or that other people would normally have to purchase and they just somehow got their hands on it? And the people who created those things aren't getting paid for the work that they've done. And these are just like fascinating, big, high level, even like ethical, legal questions to what the future of AI is going to look like. And I think some of those, so that's where thinking through this stuff impacts politics because politicians are the ones setting boundaries and regulations for the good of the world and asking the question like who's going to like tighten a leash on AI, who's going to create leash for AI. There will be practical implications for either direction of those things.
absolutely.
It's just fascinating.
Let's take that a step further because that's actually something I'm quite passionate about. Is how
Love it.
negative people view AI and how it's going to big time impact the midterm cycle in the United States. And The midterm elections are another thing I've studied a little bit about, and they're just fascinating. People go, what do you think's going to happen in the midterm election? It's like, well, who do you think's the most popular president in the last 50 years? And I ask this all over the place, and a lot of people say Barack Obama. And I go, oh, interesting. Did you know that in 2010 he got like obliterated in in the midterm elections? If you are the president, your party loses in the midterm elections. It's almost a certainty. So it has nothing. It
Wow.
obviously Trump's less popular, but this particular election cycle, the local elections that nobody ever talks about, are going to be dominated a lot more by two things: the affordability issues of homes and food and things like that, and AI. And Kristen, this is crazy, but the University of Stanford and another outlet, I can't remember right now, did two studies, and and it's amazing. It's worldwide. Do you think AI is going to be beneficial for your economy, for your country? Okay. And America is coming in dead last.
Interesting.
And and if you were to ask somebody who's voting that AI is negative, tell me if I'm wrong. My guess is that they believe AI is going to take their work. That would have to be like number one, right? Am I what
I
else
would
would it?
think, yeah, I would think AI is coming for my job, that fear mongering, but then also like AI is going to take over the world might be second.
Yeah. Uh, so that's interesting why America would be coming in worst on that. And then
That
China
is
and
shocking.
India are coming in number one on these two studies. So one study, I think the one from Stanford
Oh
had
my
China number
gosh.
one. And number two, the other one had India number one. And I was like, hang on, one of the biggest things I've heard is going to be disrupted is like call centers. And call centers are predominantly in India. And so this was like a fascinating, how are the places that we would imagine have the most workers? Uh, Unemployment among teenagers is
The most to
extremely.
that they stand to lose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you would think that, and yet they see it as being very positive. And then let's go with the second one that you said, that they think it could take over the world. That would be another thing that would be very interesting, that the Chinese or the Indians would be not as afraid of that reality as the American mindset. I think it's much more about the messaging, right? Because in China, for sure, they control
Yeah.
the messaging to their people, but in the US, it's just free
Mm.
flowing. And I think these algorithms on social media are really spinning some really negative narratives about data centers and about AI and about what they can or cannot do to the economy.
Boy, that's really funny if AI shot its own self in the foot in America.
That's It's
That'd be
and to your point on what it's
hilarious.
and to your point on what it's trained on, right? Right now, the American companies that all of which you named are American. Imagine if we lose because we shut down our data centers, because that is 30 out of 50 states either have already or are looking to ban data centers in the United States, or in their states. 30 out of 50. This is like 45% of GDP growth is from the data center build out. So just think of what you're actually voting for if you're voting to turn that down. Now, you might have your reasons. I'm not saying I'm right, you're wrong. I'm just saying people should be mindful of what is actually happening. And then if America doesn't build out
Yeah.
the AI stack, and then the Chinese do, or the
Who
Indian,
is? Yeah.
like, that might have other
Yeah.
ramifications we're
I
not
think
really
about
thinking
that
through.
a lot because it's obviously different than sometimes it gets compared to the race to build the atomic bomb, and I think that's maybe like an overstated comparison. At the same time, there are significant implications to not being first on the moon for AI, to not being like ahead of our neighbor when it comes to that. Why don't you tell me what you think some of the implications are if we innovate slower than some of these other countries?
Well, to your point, if it is, like, just walk that through, right? If it is as dangerous as the nuclear bomb, if this artificial so ASI, artificial super intelligence, or AGI, artificial general intelligence, if it is as dangerous as you think it is, then do you want it primed and created with American values or Western values, or do you want it primed with maybe more central command, other values? And again, this is if you think it's that dangerous. So rather than thinking, I think it's this
Right.
dangerous, we need to stop. Well, they're not stopping. it comes a lot more back to like the 50s nuclear buildup, not the search to make the atomic bomb, but then everything that happened after that. So kind of the 1950s
Oppenheimer.
and 1960s. Yeah, exactly. But I'd be curious, what are you hearing when people say negative things about it? Because I see what's happening, in the stock market, and people tend to be more euphoric about it. But can you tell me what are some of the more consistent negative or critical or generic uses that people are saying this is what I'm doing with it?
I think one is people, and this is a legitimate fear. People are seeing that others are getting emotionally taken over by AI, like they lean on it like a crutch and become
Yeah.
less themselves and less present. And so that's why I think that it's a good example, like comparing it to the internet. The internet can make people less present through, just going on YouTube deep dives or even like the extremes of like porn and things like that. And so I think it can make people less present, and AI can do that. It can suck you in and make you feel like you're in relationship with something. And so I think people don't like some of the relational ramifications.
Mm,
Um, and I think I'm trying to think what else. I do think that there's a major negative perception of data centers and energy, and that is something that is a huge conversation that needs to be talked about, and we do need to ask those questions and ask, like, how are we going to power AI in the future in some sort of a sustainable way? And so do you see I know people are working on that. Do you see people making headway on um on how to power AI in a healthier way?
yes, I think there's the power. This is another thing that completely blew my mind. We hosted a world, one of the best energy minds in the world. Like literally, when I start asking him questions, he goes, "Well, it's all about hydrocarbons, and carbon with this many hydrogens is butane and propane." I'm like, "You lost me already." Um, he showed me something. I'm going to say it to you, and I'll just tell you what he said and hear your reaction. He showed me a picture of an actual utility, and this actual utility said, here are the energy costs that will exist in 4 states. No data centers, some data centers, the median estimate of data center build out, or the maximum. And I'm not joking. It was in order. The highest price was if they don't build a data center. The second highest was if they build a little bit. The median was if they build some, and then the least electricity forecast price from this utility to their clients was if they build the most data centers. And this is going to be so counterintuitive to people, but it's because of two things. It's a
Yes.
combination of just the way they're building them, and then also one of the executive orders that was passed early on, which is to tell these companies to build their own electricity and to build it both
Yeah.
before and after the meter. And then also the way utilities, and this is going to be very different state by state, right? Because remember, we're 50 federal union of 50 different national states, right? So the state of Georgia, the state of
Yeah.
Texas, right? And then we send your delegates to Washington to run the federal government and or to vote on what happens in the federal government. And I think what's incredible is that in this one state in particular was where you have what's called regulated asset-based businesses. Okay. So the utility backs in. It's the state says you can have the monopoly right to sell electricity to this place, but we're not going to let you charge whatever you want. You can make X% on the asset base that you have. And so let's say you have an asset base of 100, and let's say because of the data center, you need 200, right? You need twice as the power. And the data center
Hmm.
comes in and says, "Hey, we'll pay for half of it." Right? You build the other half. So now you get to 100, but you only had to pay for 50, and you're charging the same rate on the entire space, even though the data centers built half of that infrastructure for you. And so you can see that they're able to make their money while charging the clients less as it relates to the energy being consumed. That might be in the weeds, but it is an amazing thing to make sure people know two things. One, there's a lot more going on than we hear with one simple headline, right? Data centers set to use twice as much energy as the US can produce in a single year, something like that, right?
Well,
And then,
I don't tell me if this is a bad correlation. Uh, it reminds me a little bit of I dated a guy whose dad was in forestry, and they were even though they were cutting down trees, they were required to plant 2 for every one they cut down. Is
mhm.
that similar to what you're talking about? Okay.
That's a great example. Yeah, where people say
Yeah.
that the timber industry is leading to no trees in the United States, right? But if they've been doing that for hundreds of years, then maybe theoretically could even have more trees. That's a great point.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's a great point.
So, I guess last question about this because I'm curious and I don't want to chase my curiosity too far because I think it may outstretch some of my listeners. But um, if the data centers are required to provide their own electricity, how does one do that? Where do they get it? How are they generating electricity? Because I know that China has what, 9 nuclear power plants that are providing electricity. I don't remember how many they have, and you don't need to know either. But we have what, 0? How are people providing generating electricity without take? Is it a? I guess my question is it a zero sum game, this electricity situation that we're in, or can we make more? I know we've got like solar panels. What do you think?
Yeah, so the solar build out is actually accelerated beyond anybody's forecasts. I'll give you a couple of stats that I know.
Okay.
So as of 2023, this blew my mind. As of 2023, all renewable energy in the U.S. had just become 9% of the total stack in the U.S. electricity generation. Nuclear was 9% also. So it's not that we have zero. It makes up about 9%,
Okay.
at least as of 3 years ago. Um, Now, how would we do it? Let's assume the nuclear technology is going to take too long. We don't know how to get there. There are two technologies that form a phenomenal bridge. And for the people who want clean energy, that exist as well. Natural gas burns 85% cleaner than coal. The US has about 1,000, almost 2,000 years of natural gas reserves sitting in the ground. That's why gas prices, I live in England right now, gas prices in the US are about half of what they are here in Europe, right? Sometimes a third. They're the cheapest in the world because of supply and demand mismatch. And so if you're going to build your own data center, here's what you're going to do. You're going to build out as much, you're going to build it in a place where you can generate solar energy if possible. You're going to lay out as many solar panels as you can and connect them to a battery. Problem is, sometimes the sun doesn't shine, right? And if you're running a data
Right.
center, it has to be on all the time. So, what's the other cheapest form of energy that you can build that is in your control on your side of the grid? And that's a gas fired plant. And so, what they're going to do is they're going to build natural gas power connected to a battery so that if there's any hiccups, the battery can always be on to manage any sort of downtime. You'd charge the battery as much as possible from the sun, and you'd always be able to charge the rest of it from the natural gas being always on, not intermittent. And that kind of combination, I just listened to a podcast by the International Energy Agency, and they said, we're way in the weeds. So yeah, I'll say this and then we'll come back up, maybe talk AI movies. Um, but they said the number one way people are powering data centers is going to be natural gas combined with batteries.
So is the smartest place to put a data center in like a field that gets a lot of sun on top of natural gas?
Yep, build a natural gas pipeline
Okay.
from anywhere in America in a place where there's as much sun as possible, and build as many data centers as you can right there. Absolutely.
That is wild. Wow. Okay. AI movies. What you got? Should we watch them? Should we boycott them?
Well, I think we should watch them and know that they're movies, but I think you have to say Terminator. Terminator 2 to me, foundational. 1992, I believe.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about AI making the movies
Mm, all right. I'm happy to talk about that.
because
That's going
that's
to
on its
be,
way. Well,
it
no,
is
no.
on
I,
its
I
way.
mean, I have not seen Terminator 5. I admit. You're talking about movies about AI.
Yeah, but I'm happy. I like the generated thing. I think we're starting to hear the AI generated songs are starting to pop up too, right? So
Yeah, it's
I don't
happening.
know. I think we're going to be quite a ways away from and I'll tell you a video that I saw. Who was it? It was Matt Damon. Matt Damon was being interviewed on one of the late night shows, And he said the story I'm about to say, and he said that's why I'm not worried about AI taking our industry. And he said that The Rock was in a movie, or Dwayne Johnson was in a movie called Smash something, the Smash Machine, or something like that, where he plays a wrestler or a boxer. I think it's him and Emily Blunt. Anyway, there's this hospital
Oh,
scene, and
yeah.
Matt Damon said he asked Dwayne Johnson, "How did you do that?" Because I haven't seen the movie, but Matt Damon said Dwayne Johnson does something like pulls the sheet over his head and has a tear or has some sort of emotional acting. And Matt Damon was like, I was stunned. I was seriously impacted by this moment. And he ended up seeing Dwayne Johnson, because you can do that when you're Matt Damon. And then he's like,
Right.
how did you come up with that, like that movement? Like, what made you do that? And Dwayne Johnson said it was a combination of something that happened. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like when a very emotional thing happened with his mother, and then when another thing that emotionally had happened when he was at a different point in his life. And he's like, AI doesn't have these
Wow.
emotional reactions, let alone be able to combine
Yeah.
two of them to then create them into a third uh, pretended emotional moment that's been constructed 100% by human reality. And I thought that was really interesting. Put it on the table for what you think
Yeah.
as someone who's been on stage in front of people. Like, what do you think? Do you think that's a good example of how it's not going to replace us?
I do think that's a great example. I think it will be interesting to see what AI comes up with, and I think it does it can't create emotion, but it can tap certain things. But I like the idea that can't it can't be in my mind and remember things the way that I remember things. That's
Mm,
a very interesting observation. Like Dwayne could have described in great detail those exact moments that happened to him when he was young. At the same time, um, no one has lived that but him. So that's a really great point. Um, I don't know. Plus, humans are just they're more fun.
yeah.
Regular humans are way more. I don't think we'll ever lose. I don't think we'll ever lose the like ache and need to be with humans. And I do think on some level AI will always leave us empty because it's not a soul. To me, theologically, that feels like if you replace humans with AI, you are like you're doing that to the detriment of your soul.
Mm,
And that we'll see people, need therapy for that and or lose their lives of their own volition eventually. That's the great deterioration of the soul.
yeah.
So
Sadly, yeah.
I do think that's going to be something interesting to monitor, and researchers will have a lot to talk about as that becomes more commonplace for sure.
Absolutely. But I love the idea. I've just always found fascinating studying film, studying comedy, the way the like I love these round tables where you've got like Tom Hanks and Jamie Foxx and so on and so forth talking about their careers. I always loved that show Inside the Actors Studio. As a child of divorce, I always found it fascinating that it was like my parents got divorced and my parents
Mhm.
got divorced. It was like actor after actress after actor after actress was sharing the same story. And then with comedy, the just the way each comedian is completely different. Like Sebastian Maniscalco and Kevin James and Jerry Seinfeld are so radically different, you know?
So different. Yeah, I think that was, put on display in a really beautiful way with Jerry's Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee thing
100%.
that he did, where he would just take 'em each comedian for a drive, and man, every single conversation led somewhere different. I mean,
Mm.
the Jim Carrey one alone
Yeah.
of him trying to scale a wall out of nowhere. You're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, dude."
Absolutely.
Yeah, so how did you develop this love of comedy?
Well, I just love I love laughing. Um, I mean, what a silly
You're
thing
good
to
at
say.
it.
but I love laughing. And I love the idea of being like, I love public speaking. And I think this blend of public speaking. And then I heard some of the pastors that I listened to, which we get into some of these. Like one of the original podcasts that I ever listened to was a Mark Driscoll podcast, of all things, and he was
Wow.
saying that he studies stand-up comedians to be a better public speaker. I happen to love public speaking, and I just find the ability to stand up in front of people for 60 minutes and make them laugh. I mean,
Yeah.
you have, in fact, I'm going to say this. I find that to be just a fascinating and terrifying thing. So tell me, when you've said a joke that you thought was hilarious and people didn't laugh, or when you've said something that you didn't think was that funny and they like lost their minds, what do you feel like as a comedian? Like, I just feel like that would be such an interesting thing. I'd love to know your thoughts.
Well, and I have thoughts on this from a couple different perspectives because improv comedy is a group effort. And it creates what makes it funny in part is that it creates situational comedy. It is sort of a live feed of a sitcom, so to speak. Um, and so what I love about that is in the team effort, that means that I can play just the straight character and not be funny at all. And what makes that funny is there are funny things happening around me, and all I
Mm,
have to do is within my character respond to it. And so it's less about one-liners and things like that. It's more about how do these characters co-create a world together, in a world that's somewhat it's off enough from reality that like as you're watching someone sort of normal interact with that world or interact with this character who's bizarre and out there, that becomes I think the audience is able to put themselves in that scene and be like, this is hilarious. I can't believe this is happening. What
right.
would I do in that situation when the only thing that kills roosters from overtaking the world is to shoot them with bananas, which was our most recent
Yeah.
lawnmower, right? And so that's just like that's hilarious because the situation is hilarious. On the flip side, I have done 2 open mics stand up. I do not consider myself a funny person, and that's why improv works for me. I know other people would consider me funny, and I appreciate that. Improv works for me because I can go in and out of I like to do voices, I like to do different characters and things like that, and so I think the characters I create can be funny. I just don't think I'm funny. Anyway, with stand up, you're up there by yourself.
Oh,
It is just you. And it is up to you to take this audience by yourself on a journey into your mind. And there's just so many having done that, and I have not had the experience in those 2 open mics that I did of making the audience laugh. I got up there and I started talking and I told what things that I thought were funny, and they did not find them funny. Partly, I think because,
and yet the story is funny.
partly I think the story's funny. Partly because I think, it was a room full of fellow comics and that were there. It was just people that were there to do stand up. There wasn't
Oh,
anyone in the audience like someone off the street who's just willing to laugh at anything. And so they're going to be more critical.
right.
They're not as likely to laugh. Um, so you're automatically going into a tough crowd. And at the same time, I found out the hard way how little I had prepared. Because I also love public speaking, and I also am a student of oration and how to work with an audience, but in a message, in a talk that you're giving, you have 20 to 30 plus minutes and you're not expected to be funny. If you're funny, it's a cherry on top. It's a delightful surprise to the audience that this message that they planned on hearing just also happened to be light and funny at times, and that it shows a lot of oratory skill to be able to like take someone on kind of a winding emotional journey where you can make them feel things like
Mm,
you can help them develop a passion about something that they didn't previously have a passion for. You can help them feel an emotion they had not previously prepared to feel, and you can make them laugh when they were not prepared to laugh.
yeah.
When it comes to stand up, they are They are showing up expecting to laugh.
Yeah.
And so you only have a certain amount of time unless you get a whole set. But even if you have a whole set, if you haven't made them laugh close to the beginning, that you lose trust with your audience. And
Hmm.
so I realized like and they also if you're in the comedy space for a long time, they do laugh counts. They count how many laughs you get in a set. I
Really?
think that there's probably even some people that like have a like you know how they do like attendance counters. They have the
Hmm.
little
Yeah.
clickers and they count people walking through the door. They do that with
Yeah.
laughs
Wow.
sometimes. And that's a metric of success as a comic is how many can you get. And so I would probably have in my past have considered myself a slow burn. Like let me work us up to it. And so that would make me less successful as a comic if it takes me longer to get to a laugh. And so
Interesting.
the study of this is how do I create an environment such that I can get people from point A to point R without having to go through B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. Like how can we shortcut to a punchline? What's great about that is it requires you to develop I would consider myself someone who cares about an economy of words, where can I say
Writing
with
that down.
10 words what would have taken someone else 30 words to say? So that's like a fascinating study in and of itself. How can I make what I'm saying really rich
Hmm.
and dense without being so dense that people can't keep up? Um, and I think really good comics have to be able to do that with an economy of words where they can, with very few words, accomplish a lot. And then you have to overlay that with, I am perfectly relaxed and in control of this moment.
Yeah.
Like it's the personality on top of the economy. So it really is a fascinating study of how to get there, I think. And it's not one that I've mastered, which to your point, I can't consider myself an expert at comedy because the more I study it, the more respect I have for people that do it really well.
Oh my gosh, yes. You know, the two things, and I think I'd love to go in this direction with you. The second one, the first thing of a when you were saying A to R, the one thing that I find amazing about stand-up comedians is the ones that can create an inside joke within an hour, right? So they'll do a talk, they'll do a
Yes.
thing, and then they'll
Yes.
come back to it, and then that's
The
like,
callback.
yeah, it's amazing. I don't know how they do it. Like, there's this one called the King's Jester with Hassan Minhaj. I think is one of the greatest public speaking things I've ever seen in my life. And he does this where he makes this comment about his loving monogamous marriage, and then he says it at the end, and it like brings it full circle. But the other thing that I find amazing about stand-up comedians, and this can maybe bring us into the back into the political or the economic world, is their ability to talk about truth. I find fascinating. Like
Mm,
Dave Chappelle has and Bill
yeah.
Burr, they can talk more about real life and call out these like deeply contentious issues better than the church can have most of the time. And they're doing it in a
Yeah.
way where like I don't know. And so I wanted to ask you this question. Um, Hassan Minaj's Jester one, I found was amazing. It was one of my favorite stand-up things I've ever seen. I've watched it 5 or 6 times. I just think it's brilliant. And then I found out that some of the stories he told weren't factually true. And this comes to like one of the things I find
Uh-huh.
out is amazing. And so I'm curious, as a comedian, do you find it 100% okay, 0% okay, or somewhere in the middle that someone would have created a story and then either kind of embellished or fully embellished it so that it was funny, but told as truth?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it is an important question. Ah, so that's tough because I've also I think comics would probably debate this, and there's different perspectives on it because I've also heard of another comic who tells deprecating stories about other people, like he's making fun of them, and it sounds like, gosh, I can't believe you would like jab that person that way. And the person that he's jabbing is actually about himself. Like,
Ah,
he just made up an
mm,
imaginary person that he's making fun of, and he's like, "I can't believe you would spend," I don't wanna say the joke because it'll out this person, but it's just like, I find that fascinating because it is that becomes the fuel for his art,
mm,
is self-awareness that's turned around on itself, so that he can just make fun of people for doing dumb stuff, and he's really just making fun of himself. And so it's a
right.
lie in the sense of it's not actually
Yeah.
about that. There's not that he's not talking about his girlfriend or some girl that he went on a date with who wanted this to happen or who was a diva about this. He's talking about himself being a diva, but he can't say it that way. Or he's choosing not to, and it just becomes funny by twisting it. Um so I think it is interesting because you have to ask the question, like, what's the fuel of their art?
Mm,
And what are the situations? Because improv is a lie. Everything is completely made up.
yeah.
Acting is a lie. Everything is completely fake. You're just pretending if you think about it that way. And so, like, where's the line in that regard? I think that's why you do have to take some comedy with a grain of salt to
Right.
realize, like, that there's still artistry and where the inspiration came from and what they created with it. Um, I it and yeah, I don't know. It is tough, like, when it is presented as truth, though. I don't have an answer for that. I don't know
Well,
what I would do.
I think what made it more of an issue. So I hear you. So I think if I were if someone was a stand-up
Yeah,
comedian and they made up a story and told it as truth, but it was just a funny story and they just made it up, right? Like maybe
yeah,
Brian Regan talking about
right.
when he
Or it
broke his
happened to
leg.
their friend and that
Yeah,
yeah.
and yeah. I think what made the Hassan Minhaj one different was it was about him as a Indian Muslim or Indian American getting his slammed on the hood of a car by a police officer, and like how it was maybe communicating a moral concept to about America, but leveling it up. One of the
Yeah.
things I appreciate about the stand-up comic, and one of the things I'm trying to grow in my own life, and then connecting to a biography I'm rereading right now on the Apostle Paul, is I want to be better at truth telling, right? Not that I'm
Mm.
lying, but
Yeah.
like calling out more obvious truths in the world. I think there's just so many times. Like I was with a friend the other day and they said something. I was like, that is such nonsense. But I didn't want to call it out because what's the point? We're just gonna it wasn't really
Yeah.
so, but that's something about stand-up comics that it's like, oh my gosh, watching, I'll just say this because I love the story. When Bill Burr goes, you remember COVID, right after COVID, there was that massive like anti-vaccine debate. And Bill Burr goes, I know how to solve this. We're going to put all the liberals up in a helicopter with guns because they hate guns. And in the guns will be vaccines. And then we're going to put all the anti-vaxxers, and as he described the anti-vaxxers, those he said, this is his own words, like hillbillies with overalls and one strap, and we're going to put them on the field, and they're going to run across this empty field like in Hunger Games, and you're going to have the liberal anti-gun person shooting vaccines at the people in the field. I was like, what a ridiculous, what a ridiculous concept, but also it like brings this like idea to get together to talk about this, this obvious thing. And so it's just interesting to highlight, reading the Apostle Paul, who's like, I'm going to tell the truth and go into this town that I've never been in and just share the truth and see how Dave Chappelle or how, other comedians can do it. It's an incredible gift and the world needs
It
that,
is. And
especially if
it
AI tells
totally
lies.
definitely, especially like discerning truth from lie is going to be one of the greatest and most important muscles that we can develop in the coming days, and probably
Mm,
always has been, let's be honest. But what you're
mm.
describing in comedy is it reminds me a lot of the idea of going blue. Have you heard of that?
I have, but I don't remember why.
That's okay. Going blue means when you use sex or like a ton of profanity to be funny.
Ah,
And and so they kind of train you early on not to lean on that because it's kind of cheap, right? And a
right.
lot of comics still do it. And maybe that's as similar as like, oh, you know the rules of literature so that you can break them. I don't know. But anyway, it's still kind of seen as like cheap comedy. And I wonder if that's another way to think about like outright making up a story as if it's your own. It's like, to your point, there's so much in reality that's funny that if you have to go making up legitimately a fake story and presenting it as if it's true, like, is that even really the highest form of comedy to sidestep to have to like, did you really have to sidestep reality to create something funny when there was
Right.
so much there in in what we can see and experience every day that you could have, like, pulled from?
Yeah.
Unless, like, in his situation, maybe there was a point that he was making that he didn't have a story to pull from real life, but he still wanted to make a different point about reality.
Mm,
So I don't know, I would need to watch it because he may have been a truth teller in that story. The greater truth that he was trying to get at may have required a story like that to arrive at, and he just didn't have one to pull from, so he had to make it up. I don't know.
no, that's a good point. I do like, I like
Yeah.
the, to your point of there's so many things that are already in existence. I think one of the things that some of the best comedians do so seamlessly. And I know it's worth loads of work behind, as you said, it's like tons of preparation and trial and error. But the idea of just making fun of ourselves and pointing out our own human hypocrisies, it
Yeah.
tends to be one, like Seinfeld is a master at that. All these
Yes.
guys, like, it's just hilarious how ridiculously hypocritical we are as people that that you could just make fun of that, and then we just giggle at ourselves. Right? I mean, it's like I watched a video last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, last night about or 2 nights ago, where Steph Curry and LeBron James were on a podcast with Steve Nash, and they were talking about this three
Oh,
pointer that
fun.
Steph. Yeah, it's amazing. And they were talking about this 3 pointer that Steph Curry hit to basically secure the gold medal game a couple of years ago. And they paused it. And in the corner are Kevin Durant and LeBron James, two of the greatest players of all time. And LeBron James is like literally has his hands up in the air like this. And Steph Curry's just dying laughing at himself for this absurd shot that he takes where he's triple covered basically. And the top 5 player of all time is standing there with nobody on him. And then, and LeBron James is like, "What were you thinking?" It's so funny, to your point of just, it's a great
That's
video.
awesome. So LeBron was wide open basically, and Steph still tries to attempt the shot. Is that what happened?
LeBron not only was wide open, standing next to him is Kevin Durant, who many people would also say top 20, top 10
Oh,
point
yeah,
all time.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
both
Like,
standing
you
there.
had 2 of the most
LeBron's got his
amazing,
hands
most
up.
capable people.
Unreal. It is unreal. And it's
That
not
is
like
hilarious.
it
Did
is.
Steph miss the shot?
No, he hits the shot. He totally hits the shot. It's an unbelievable shot. That's why, but watching Steph Curry laugh at himself, even though on like Steph
Yes.
Curry is technically the better shooter by far, but
Yeah.
he was triple covered and he's falling out of, like, he's basically falling to the ground and throws this ball into the air. It's ridiculous. But it's amazing. And it's only great because it goes in. If it doesn't, it's like, and the America loses. It's
He's the biggest
ridiculous.
idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody should watch
Yeah.
this video. It's a great example too of being so humble that he can just laugh at himself and be like, yeah, I should have passed the ball.
I'm gonna I'm gonna pretend I have one of those podcast people like, "Hey, Randy, pull that video up
Yeah.
for us so we can watch it together." One
Come on,
day.
Randy.
One day. Well, let's cut to commercial really
Randy can
quick.
do it.
I don't have those either. Yeah, Randy. Oh my gosh. We're not Joe Rogan yet.
Hey,
Not yet.
you'll get
I
there.
don't know if I wanna be female Joe Rogan.
Come on,
I
you
do
can do
like the
it.
idea of being able to hop around to whatever topic I want. Yeah.
I do
I
think
just
one
wanna
of
do
you,
whatever.
absolutely. Well, one of your skills. So as I was thinking about, and I purposefully didn't message you and say, what are we going to talk about? Because I knew that your goal was a kind of Joe Rogan Go Anywhere style podcast. So I didn't want to cheat. But one of the things that
Yeah, no cheating.
gave me comfort is both in history, just talking to you on phone calls, me, you, Lindsay, about different topics, and then also watching you do videos in the past. You are a comforting interviewer. And so I think as you continue your podcast, it's you bring that out of your guests. And I think you have the ability to be that female Joe Rogan, but the go anywhere kind of thing because of the way that you can ask the questions. So keep going.
Oh my goodness. Greg, that is such a huge compliment.
Hmm.
I really appreciate that compliment. It means a lot. Okay, so we have covered AI. We have covered kind of the stock market, some economics. We've talked about comedy. Um, I want to know, let's see, there's so many things that we could talk about. You said that apologetics was really important to you. For those who don't know, apologetics is kind of, well, no, Greg, how would you define apologetics? What are apologetics?
Just
Is
the
it a bunch of apologizing?
no, just providing explanations and answers for a particular thing. So if I was a basketball
Yeah,
apologist, I would be trying to make the
apologist.
case for why basketball is the greatest sport in the history of the world, which it is. That would
Mhm.
be an apologist.
Very good, very good. So when Christians say apologetics, it's really the case for what the validity is of believing in God, believing in the triune God, believing in the Bible, etc. Um, why are you even a Christian, Greg?
That's a great question. I'm a Christian because, I mean, the easy answer is because the Lord came after my heart. But I think the better, more
Mm,
detailed answer would be a combination of a legacy of Christ followers. So my great, great, great grandfather leading his son and then his son to be Christ followers and to just continue that legacy. Um, and then a combination of me stumbling through life and having the grace from the Lord to be able to accept that it's true. And it's a humbling exception or
yeah,
acceptance, right? It's humbling to say, yeah, I am not perfect. I have flaws, I have failures, and I need a savior. There's a massive humility that you have to get yourself to reach that point.
yeah.
But I'm lucky enough to where I became a Christian when I was 5 after having opened a
Mm,
Crayola 64 crayon set on my 5th birthday. And then, through life, have just had these moments where it's been made so crystal clear to me. I would say I have the gift of faith, but I'm also a argumentative person. And so from, the age of 11, hey, dad, what if the disciples made up the guy, made it all up. So I've had
yeah,
these questions
yeah,
my whole life, and that's why I gravitated towards these apologists, just to say questions like, "Well, what about this?" and then hear somebody answer them. Like, "Well, what about this?" and then have somebody answer it. So I just love things like that. I do the
yeah.
same thing with economics and the other topics we were talking about, stand-up comedy. Why is LeBron James not better than Michael Jordan? Like, I love those cases being made. And then I particularly loved, and how I remained a Christian was having one of the deepest points that ever brought me to where I am today was in business school, 2013, 2014. One of my
Yeah.
classmates
You were in
was,
Chicago.
yeah, I was in Chicago, and he was an atheist, and he told me that he loved, Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris. And so I dove into that world, and I haven't had my faith built that strongly many times in my
Mhm.
life than watching what the best of those who supposedly are going to present the opposing view have to say, and then be like, oh, well, I can actually see why they might be wrong there and there and there. And that was
Yeah.
just one of those. So to answer your question where I am today, that's why.
No, it's so I remember having a similar experience where I was like, I'm just gonna like entertain the idea that this universe doesn't have a divine creator.
Mm,
Let me go into the research and just find out what are the best theories for why we're here. If it's a like 1 in 1 trillion zillion billion odds, what's the best theory then? If it's not intelligent design. And I remember just to your point, and not to steal your moment, because I think that's one of the reasons I created this podcast, is a fearless, relentless, like boldly looking reality in the face, even if it's scary and even if it takes me places I do not want to go. Like, we have to do that because the truth will always stand up to scrutiny. It always
Yeah.
will. And if what I believe can't stand up to scrutiny, then I must let go of what I believe. I must. I'm obligated. And so I was like, let me just see. It was hilarious because I realized, and I should go, I should ask Claude these questions now that we have AI or whoever, and see what they come up with. But at the time when I was researching it, the best theory for how we came to be that was supposedly scientific is, well, if there's a 1 in 1 billion trillion whatever odds, there therefore must be 1 in 1 billion trillion universes. Their answer was the multiverse.
Right.
That was the most robust answer for why the odds of human life would happen on our planet. And I just like laughed out loud when I read that. I was like, you mean to tell me that you're like making even more matter like in order to create the odds. Do you not see how like what you're
Yeah.
doing there? It was
Yeah.
just so funny.
Exactly.
Um anyway.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, the things had to be created anyway. I'm with you. Even if it's 1 out of 1 trillion billion, whatever number, where did that
Yes.
stuff come from? That still doesn't answer. Even if it is
Where'd
that
it
one
come
and
from?
whatever, where did it come from?
No. Where'd it come from? Hello? So
Mhm.
anyway, it is fun to think about. And I can relate to the courage it takes to like look in the face these people that are held up as the like highest thinkers and the experts in the opposing viewpoint. One of the principles that I really believe in any debate is, or any conversation where you're coming from different perspectives, and this is true if you're talking about the cosmos, and it's also true if you're in a marital argument, is proper debate involves me being able to restate your perspective to the degree that you say, yeah, you understand what I'm saying.
Mm,
If I can't do that, if I can't restate your perspective, then we're not actually having a conversation on equal footing.
right.
Um, if you're making a point and I can't state your point sufficiently to where you're like, yes, you understand my point, we're not making any headway. So I think that that's a really courageous thing to do, is to go so far into it that you can state someone else's perspective well.
Yeah.
So that's very cool that you
That's a,
did that.
well, that's a good point. That's also what was behind a lot of the kind of Socratic method. Totally agree with you on the marital argument. Should I be talking about, should I be responding to my wife unless I know exactly what she's thinking or feeling? I probably am just looking to speak, which is what I do way too often.
Yeah.
Um, but your point,
Uh,
one of the things that I found fascinating, and I would just love people to know this, I'm not negating the option of God created evolution when I say this. But this was one of those
yeah.
moments where I read, I can't remember if it was Richard Dawkins, The Selfish Gene, or Richard Dawkins, The Blind Watchmaker. But I read both of those books. And one of them, he's just walking through the math of the DNA. Now remember, there's only ACTG. That's DNA, ACTG. And if you know your permutations, you know it's one. How many times can you put ACTG, ATC, right? It's only a few. There's only so many ways you
Yeah.
can do that. And we've all heard that we're 95% of the same DNA as apes or monkeys or whatever. Well, in this book, he said that cows and peas, like the green things you eat, share 95% of the same DNA. And I was like, what? Like, if put together, I don't think anybody would hear those two things. You always hear the one, right? You never hear the other. So to hear monkey, and I'm
Yeah.
sure there's geneticists out there who are going to show me why I'm wrong. So, and please do. But I hear humans and monkeys have 90 something percent of the same DNA, and so do cows and peas. And that to me immediately denigrates this other argument that we hear all the time, which is like a proof
Yes.
case that this whole other, the creation argument couldn't exist, which it in and of itself I think is bunk. But I just thought that was such a fascinating takeaway from not being afraid of Richard Dawkins and diving into it.
Yes. That's great. What a great epiphany. I love that.
W- Yeah.
What's been another like deeply faith building moment or season of your life?
I felt this a lot in my life where I will be kind of things will just happen. Um, at interesting moments. For example, I was listening to a sermon on Ruth when I was dating Lindsay, and it was one of those moments where you'd been dating for a while, but it wasn't the right amount of time before you should be married. But I knew I wanted to marry her,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm listening to the sermon. And he's like, stop waiting. You should just get married. And I was like, oh, well, that I just happened to be listening to it at that particular moment. That wasn't we didn't run to the local law office to, but it was, oh, that's right. I
Yeah.
am going to do
Yeah.
that. I'm going to follow. And so faith deepening moments in my life, it's interesting. I think many of them come when facing the unknown or when facing fear.
Yeah.
And those are probably the biggest moments in my life when I faced a big uncertainty and I didn't know how it was going to turn out. And therefore, I was just reliant on um, praying and then coming to the realization where, however it turns out, uh, I'm going to be okay. And here's why, because of what I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah,
How
I
about
I
you?
think that's a really great point. Well, I just want to point out you've been if, through some really challenging things. I want to acknowledge that. And I do think that one of the best journeys that we can go on with the Lord is arriving at a place of peace with whatever the outcome is. And I wrote this down as a question to ask you. So I'm going to sidestep your question back to me for now because I want to keep going. I said, here's your superpower, Greg. And one of the main reasons you're on here. You have a very strong gift of being able to maintain a high level of contentment, joy, curiosity, and satisfaction in almost any circumstance. How did you get that way?
Well, thank you. Honestly, I think I was built that way. And I,
Okay.
I believe I'll try to
That's
think if there's a,
terrible news for most of us.
well, I'm going to try to think about it,
It's
but
just genetics.
no, well, part of me wants to just be honest in terms of
Yeah, totally. You're
I've got,
wired. You're wired toward that end. I agree with that.
I have to acknowledge, I think a big part of it is just kind of how I was created and how I was wired. But I also think there's a level of perspective. And I'll give you a layer of contentment that I've arrived at that I didn't have, um, maybe
Mm,
for the last 25 years that I've arrived at in the maybe 25 years before that I've arrived at in the last 5 or so. And it comes from having an eternal perspective and a reframing of priorities. And I haven't arrived this is
mm,
anything like that. But this is going to sound so ridiculous, but I'll just give you an example. I used to have a an obsession with watching TV shows and movies and watching all of them and making sure I've seen the most things and making sure like Lindsay and I watch them together. Cause if we don't watch it together, then it's not, and I have this big list. And then I was like, through kind of brute force, like raising two kids and living overseas and traveling for work, you just can't do that. So I think it was a combination of that.
yeah.
But having let go of some of those has been really freeing because I used to feel this big weight of, I need to watch Severance and I need to watch Peaky Blinders. I've heard is really good. Oh, and Breaking Bad and Superstore. My brother-in-law told me I need to watch Superstore and I really want to watch, and it would just kind of pile up. And then
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't, I mean, I enjoyed them when I watched them. I'm not like complaining, but I've now moved to a point where it's like, wow, like, look, there are so many shows that I know are just amazing and incredible, but I don't have time. And you know what? I'm going to not go to bed upset that I watched Seinfeld again instead of cranking through a show that I've never seen before and just getting through this big laundry list. I think it's a really stupid example, but I want to admit that one area that brought me a lack of contentment was catching up, like falling
Yeah,
behind.
not being able to keep up. Yeah.
Exactly. And
That's so relatable. If
yeah.
not in media, in all other areas of life, for sure.
So Matt Chandler talks a lot about the eternal perspective and losing the illusion of control, and kind of sitting back and really thinking, listen, I'm going, I believe, to live forever. And if this show is of such eternal awesomeness, it will be in heaven. Like, I will be able to watch
Yeah,
this
totally.
show in heaven if it's really that good.
I think that is such an important perspective, and I like that you're talking about that because the way I normally talk about this, and I think I brought it up some on UJ, my podcast with my friend UJ, but this actually ties to singleness for me.
Mm,
As a 40-year-old single person who has chosen to remain celibate, I still am not married, and I still have no promise or guarantee that I will get married. And yet, I think I'm able to live a really full, beautiful life without feeling like God is holding out on me. And the reason is because of the eternal perspective, where I have just gotten to this place where I'm like, okay, people love sex and people love, to prioritize that. And on Friends, they would talk about, like, I haven't had sex in so long and it's a dry spell or whatever. And I'm like, try 40 years, dude. And so I'm like, that never totally computed to me like we're entitled to this or like it's a
mm,
human need. It is definitely not a human need that we have. It is beautiful and is very special, and there's a level of intimacy I believe that's available that maybe I haven't experienced to the full, and that's okay because I'm like, whatever the highest form of pleasure is, whether it's like the best food or the best movie you've ever seen or the best, sexual experience that anyone's ever had, is nothing compared to what heaven will be. And
mm,
so I don't have to worry that I'm going my that I'm missing out on something in this blink of an eye that we call life, because we have an eternity to enjoy the greatest pleasure, which is in the presence of God forever. This is one of my favorite things to talk about when it comes to Jesus and how he walked the earth,
mm,
because he went around like healing people and feeding people and just making things better. I just imagine like the earth was brighter wherever he was and people's lives just got better. And one of the biggest themes, if not the biggest theme to his teaching, is the kingdom of God is here. I've arrived. I'm
mm,
bringing the kingdom of God with me, which means that wherever he went and whatever he did, he was giving the world a picture of what the world likes when what earth looks like when God reigns. This is
mm.
what it looks like. Things are better. People are healed. The blind see, the lame walk, the hungry are fed. You just have everything you need and all is well. You're in this perfect state of equilibrium. And I really think that he came to give us a picture of what heaven is like. And so all I see in that is like, man, all the beauty remains from this world, and then everything that's broken about it just gets healed and repaired and fixed. And so I love thinking about all the pleasures
That's
of this
awesome.
life, feasting and making merriment as foretastes of heaven, and it's the preview. It's a great preview of what's available to us. So anyway, I like that you said that because it's true. There will still be art in heaven. There will still be beauty in heaven, if not like all the things that you enjoyed about those shows and movies and things that you've not seen, whether it was interesting twists and turns or the character development or how something resolves. Think about heaven as like the great resolution, while
Yeah.
also simultaneously being the most perfect adventure. Like you get it all. And so I,
Yeah.
I think that's great. We
I
can let
and
go. We can let go of needing that.
Absolutely. Like, there's something about story that is inherently created and must,
Yeah,
in my opinion, be part of who God is. And so I'm obsessed with the
totally.
TV show Lost. Happy to argue with anybody who thinks it's not great. But the idea that like you peel the onion back in Lost and then you get a much deeper thing is so true with the Lord. Like you peel back with
Yeah.
this one thing and you find out there's a whole other, oh wow, he's not just this
Yes.
layer one person, he's like layer 2 billion. And you're never going to get to
No,
the
like
bottom because it's perfect and
he's
deep.
operating on levels. It's so cool. And that was one of the greatest gifts, I think, of understanding the Bible as a big story and a narrative and reading through the Bible chronologically is I think that's one of the ways I would say that's one of the ways God is most misunderstood is people expect that if God were good, he would just get to the punchline faster or
Hmm.
faster than I want. And what we see in his storytelling and what we see is that he is in like a beautiful creative way slow to roll out his plan. He keeps he's not sometimes he breaks the fourth wall and sometimes he doesn't, right? He
Right.
keeps things hidden and it's like um and I think yes he's beautiful and good, but he's also so interesting. Like
Mm.
the fact that he would just um slow slow leak out information to different generations and just give them more and then give them more and then give them more and then finally get this apex in Jesus. Like that's so creative. And in the way that he like I was comparing him the other this is I don't know if this is blasphemous or not, but I was comparing him the other day to Taylor Swift because she does all these Easter eggs. And you talked about in comedy, like you love a callback. I feel like
Yeah.
everything God does is planting Easter eggs and prepping for a callback. He's like the greatest comedian, he's the greatest
Yeah.
artist, he's the greatest songwriter. It's just amazing.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
It's amazing.
How, so please tell me this because again, I'm, I haven't liked any of her recent albums, but I think 1989 is one of the greatest albums in the history of the world, top to bottom. What are these Easter eggs she does? That sounds fascinating.
I mean, she's big into numbers, which is very similar to God, hilariously. Um, and so, that I listen, I cannot pretend to be a Taylor Swift apologist. And so
Nice
it's
use.
more of I just know that she she there's a callback for you. She does these like she'll plant things and things and she'll do like secret codes and the way that she writes stuff and different things that she'll drop in her Instagram and social media and stuff might be like a hint towards something that's going to happen in the future and
Hmm.
ask Gemini because it is really fun to think about, and that's what kind of gets Swifties really hooked is like paying attention and combing through her stuff to be like, what if it's this? Like
Right.
release dates or whatever, or some little hint about the Eras tour that she did, and so it's fun to watch. I used to get annoyed by Taylor Swift, and now I have a lot of respect for her. I obviously there's things I disagree with and whatnot, but I still think she's very creative and she makes things fun for her audience, and I think she really does love her fans and does a lot of things like to make things fun for them. And so in the same way, I'm seeing the image of God stamped on Taylor Swift because in the same way, God, I think, drops little things to make things fun. Not, I mean, yes, sometimes it makes things more confusing and sometimes we're wrong in our predictions. But I don't think he does it to confuse us. I think he does it for what do they call that in magic? What is it called? The Prestige, right? That movie, The Prestige. Like,
I
I think he
love
does
that
it
movie.
for that moment.
Yeah.
Such a good movie.
Mm.
Christian Bale's my favorite actor. I think you knew
Really?
that. They didn't know
Oh,
that.
I
Christian
love
Bale's my
I love
favorite.
that
Yeah.
movie.
Now you know. So the Prestige is like what the turn is of like that moment of like that magical moment of, whoa, that's crazy that it all happened and came together that way. And I think he loves that. I think that striking of like being able to like look back and seeing how he wove it together is what he does that for.
Absolutely.
So
I this- only because this is the funniest reason was open to liking Taylor Swift in the beginning. Not that this is all about Taylor Swift, but was I was DJ. I used to DJ weddings, and I was DJing my cousin's wedding,
Of course you
and
did.
my uncle calls me and he goes, "You have to play Taylor Swift." And I was like, "You're joking, right?" And he goes, "No." And he's like my intellectual uncle too. So, the one like he's a PhD. And so he comes out, he's like, "You must play 22 by Taylor Swift." I was like, "Okay." And then I'm playing it and watching my uncle sing 22, however the song goes. And I was like, "This is
That's
amazing."
amazing.
It was absolutely amazing. And then it freed me up. And I think one
That's
of the
awesome.
things, all the way back up to your contentment thing, uh, there is I think a lot of the reason why people aren't as free is maybe I think one of the reasons people don't they don't express contentment, or they're like, "Well, that food wasn't very good," or whatever. I think sometimes it comes from like an internal unfreeness, and some sort of a
Mm.
something is trapped or locked, or they're critical of themselves, or something, where to watch my on the other side, to watch my, I don't know what he was, 50 some 40s, five, I don't know how, 50 something year old uncle singing to Taylor Swift, singing how she's 22. Like, it was amazing. And I think there's something
That's
about
amazing.
letting ourselves be free from Elf, right? That whole point of just singing,
Yes.
just sing, right?
Yes. Just sing. Well, it's actually, I would say that what you just described is one of the great motivations of why I started Salad Comedy,
Mm,
is I wanted a space where you couldn't say no.
mm,
There was no no. Because improv is predicated on the premise of yes and. You say yes. Someone presents an idea and you don't
mm,
reject it. You welcome that idea and then you say, how can I build from here?
interesting.
And it creates this really great environment um where we can just play and be totally free and not like restricted by the criticisms of others, by and you still have to have boundaries in life, like there's it's good to be, we need discernment, we need to discern truth from error, we need to scrutinize things, and that's not bad.
Mm,
um but I think we all also simultaneously desire and yearn for this freedom to just like not be inhibited, to
mm,
live an uninhibited life. Maybe it's, I want to live uninhibited by things that don't matter. So freedom, like truth is freedom. So if I'm sort of, the things that are holding me back, if they're lies about reality, if they're lies about myself, like I want to cut and unfetter myself from those chains so
mm,
that I can run straight forward into the truth and the beauty that is in there. I think the freedom that you're talking about is freedom from the things that hold us back that really weren't meant to hold us back. Um, and so salad became this place of play and childlike joy and delight and silliness and fun. And we all want that. And it's a great question to work back from, of like, why did we lose that as we got older? Like
right.
from childhood into adulthood, what what has held us back from retaining that childlike spirit, you know?
Absolutely. That's a how do
Beautiful.
we get more childlike? Because you see people just get jaded
Yeah.
um, throughout life,
Yes.
and it's a lot of it,
Mhm.
understandably so. It's not that it's like for no reason at all.
Yeah, life's hard. Totally,
Mhm,
totally. Because there's a lot of things in life that break trust, not just with other humans, but sort of like with our understanding of reality. And so we kind of have to create a world that makes sense to us in order to feel like we can function. Um, and the world is a broken place. So yeah, it's tough. But that's why I think that's why comedy is so cool, is because you kind of do create this like closed system.
mm,
It's for 2 hours on Sunday, we step into a world where it's all yes. And we can't live like that in everyday life. So you do kind of have to create these spaces and places of safety that when I can't go say yes to everything in everyday life, that's
Right.
just not healthy.
Right.
Um, so maybe it's about like a boundary way to do that too. But maybe that's just like we need play. We need to be silly. We need places where we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with kids. It's like just
I know, and you're
to,
so good
to
at
be
it.
I can also be a crazy stress bomb when I'm about to get
Oh.
on a webinar earlier and my son's asking me a question. I'm like, they're going to record in 30 seconds. And he's like, but I just want to know, which books am I supposed to read? I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, why are you being so stressed? I'm like, I'm not trying to be stressed. I wasn't stressed, but now it's got 30 and um, speaking of
Well,
children,
and you're also having dance parties on top of
well,
tables and things like
yes,
that. I know that too.
well, yeah, and we do like dance parties with the family.
Yeah.
Speaking of
Yeah.
children, I have
That's good.
them knocking. Can you give me 2 seconds? I'll be right back.
Of course.
Okay,
Well,
hold on.
and we can wrap soon too. Yeah.
Okay, well, I just need to make sure they're okay. Okay, all good. They're they're doing their own lesson right now for speech and drama. Um,
Oh, cute.
pretty on topic for what we were talking about.
Seriously, we should have them on the podcast. That'd be, oh my gosh, Greg, we're gonna have your kids on this podcast.
You should.
That would be hilarious. I want to pick their little brains because they are so cute and so smart and so silly. It's the
They
best.
definitely
Okay, I just discovered a new direction to go.
they have thoughts too. So
I know. They would share them.
that would be
I think
great.
maybe I would need a release form, I think, from their parents. So you can think about that.
I I'll
All right.
sign it. They de
Yeah,
Yeah.
sign it. In conclusion, I know for those who are listening to this podcast and cannot see this podcast, they don't know, but can you describe your background image and why this is so important to you, Greg?
It's so important to me because I don't know why I'm looking around. It's a digital background. But I have behind me I do it because I love it. It's the backdrop of the DeLorean in the movie Back to the Future, which I just love. And Lindsay took me to see the Back to the Future play for Christmas. It's amazing. And I just love it. Like
Amazing.
the idea of inspiring. And one of the other reasons why I like it is it's just fun. This goes to your point of free. Like you see people that do the blur or they do whatever comes with it. I've used this as conversation starters because it's just more exciting. It's more memorable, right? So during
It is.
COVID, the thing that was here was where SpongeBob lives. And I had people from Switzerland 5 years later, 2024, 2025, so 3, 4 years later, come up to me and go, I loved that you did that one webinar with the SpongeBob background. And I can't tell you, I had to like
That's great.
argue with my colleagues because they were like, it's so unprofessional. I'm like, no, trust me, it'll make it more like they'll remember it, and
That's right.
it, one of the things I learned from somebody a long time ago, I'm sure you've heard this a million times, is people won't always remember what you say, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And that's such a
That's
great
right.
reminder. And this is for however stupid it is, again, those listening, this backdrop that is just the inside of the DeLorean from Back to the Future with the flux capacitor, one of the coolest two words ever to be said together. Uh, it, it just makes life more fun. That's all. And we got
It
to look for
does.
those opportunities
It
because it is
does.
hard.
That's right. It is. And sometimes we have to be the creators of those opportunities. We have to make the fun. So that's
Absolutely.
good. Well, Greg, thank you for being here. Thank you for making our lives more fun and interesting. I look forward to having you on again. We can continue these conversations and talk about new ones. Yeah, I'm grateful for you, brother.
You too. Thank you. This is such a cool idea. This is such a cool platform to talk about these. And it was fun. I could easily see this going for another 2 hours. So yeah, let's do
We
it
could
again.
have
I'm
kept
excited
going.
to exactly. I'm excited to see who else you get on. And to start with Jerry Root. I mean,
Me
you're
too.
putting that's like the height
I
of
know.
amazingness. That guy, I love learning about um even movies like I know we're rapping, but just when you said Jerry, it's just talking about how much he talked. He talked
Yeah.
to me one time about Forrest Gump and how amazing that was, and just
Mm.
linking through all the different things. So
I should
yeah,
ask him that next time. Ask him to give me it because he does a great message on the Notebook too. He really does like to connect movies to life, which I love. We'll talk about all those things. Greg, have a great day. Talk to you soon.
thank you. This was fun. Thanks, Kristen.